So I saw a question on the college football subreddit. I'm not shameless. I'm not going to sit here and pretend as if every idea that pops up here on this podcast is organic. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and pretend as if that is the case. It's not. Sometimes, you see something on a tweet machine, you see something on Facebook, Reddit, whatever. Um, it's what is it, like 29 Saturdays until college football's back. We've got a ways till we talk about on the field stuff. So one of the questions in the college football subreddit this week, and I find this to be a fascinating question. So kudos to whoever popped it up in the subreddit. It was basically who that made the college football playoff this past season has the biggest drop off in 2024. So Texas, Washington, Alabama, and Michigan. And it's been unprecedented changes in those four programs. Never had a college football playoff program lost its head coach the season following a college football playoff appearance. Had not happened. And now three of the four have new head coaches going into 2024. So I find it to be a super fascinating question because when you start to kick that around of like, okay, actually, you know what? There are a couple of different options here. And I don't think the immediate thought process goes to Texas, right? Texas might be, is Texas going to be the second or third highest betting favorite to win the national championship next year? I think so, or at least pretty high. Quinn Ewers coming back for another season under Steve Sarkisian is a big deal. Moving to the SEC, you're going to be battle tested, 12-team expanded playoff. I would be shocked to not see Texas as one of the 12 teams in the college football playoff coming up in 2024. So I think, and I think we can all agree, and you'd be going out on a hell of a limb if you're going to say Texas is going to have the biggest drop-off of the four teams that made the college football playoff. But I think we can, the majority of us can agree that it's probably not Texas. I feel like of the things that in a divided America that we can agree on, it's that of those four schools, Texas is probably not the one to see the biggest drop-off in 2024. And that's where the conversation gets interesting. Alabama, Washington, Michigan, all with new head coaches. All have seen mass exoduses. Michigan lost a 44-member senior/graduate class. Alabama saw damn near 30 kids get in the portal when Kalen DeBoer took over that head coaching job. Washington had mass exodus after Kalen DeBoer left Washington for Alabama. Jed Fish tried to get some kids to go from Arizona to Washington. Didn't exactly work out the way I'm sure he wanted it to. So there are question marks that abound at those three programs. And when you start to dissect the question of who has the biggest drop-off, I think there are some questions that you have to ask before you get to an answer to the main question. Michigan is going to have a little bit more continuity than Alabama and Washington is. You hire Sharon Moore from already on your staff. You don't lose the kids from in the transfer portal that you saw with Alabama and Washington when their head coaching jobs changed. So I feel like you could almost eliminate Michigan on that alone, right? That there is already a familiarity inside the program with the guy who is now the head coach. So I don't know that you can label Michigan in that same category. But then when you add in the fact that hardly anybody in America is losing the experience that Michigan is losing, that when you put together the roster of guys who will not be back for the Wolverines from a national championship winning team in 2023 to 2024, I don't know that you can just automatically write them off as they are not the answer to the question. Now, it feels as if, you're not implementing a new staff, all of that stuff, for the most part. That Michigan probably is number 2 on this list of who has the biggest drop-off. Texas does not have a big drop-off. Michigan, I remain to be somewhat skeptical. I don't know if skeptical is even the word. Somewhat interested in how the first year for Sharon Moore goes. Because Jim Harbaugh's not dumb. I've made that argument time and time again here on the podcast, on the show, that Jim Harbaugh, when he got to Michigan, made stupid decisions. But he's not dumb. And there's a difference between dumb and stupid. Dumb people don't have the ability to make smart decisions. Stupid people do and make dumb decisions. And Jim Harbaugh made stupid decisions. But he's not dumb. And he left at the right time. Whether they won the national championship or not, I think Jim Harbaugh was probably coaching his final season at Michigan, barring a absolute collapse and nobody in the NFL being interested in Jim Harbaugh. He was coaching his final year at Michigan because you look at the cupboard's not bare by any stretch of the imagination. The cupboard is just different. There are different ingredients that are in the Michigan cupboard. Now, whether you want to cook with those ingredients or not is another discussion for another day. But the ingredient list, the grocery list, is significantly different for Michigan. And you're going from this analogy doesn't work anymore. You're going from experienced ingredients to ingredients getting their first run. That analogy doesn't work. But I feel like you can solidly place Michigan in that number 2 spot of probably not going to see a gigantic drop-off. And then you get to Wisconsin, or you get to Wisconsin. You get to Washington and Alabama. And I think it just boils down to how much faith and belief do you have in the guys that got those jobs? What do you believe they're going to put together in their first year? Because the immediate, bell that goes off in your head is Alabama. You're a dude replacing the dude. You lose 24 kids to the transfer portal. And it, at times, has appeared as if, oh my gosh, the world has fallen, Rome is burning, and other schools in the SEC couldn't help but appreciate the view as the flames got higher and higher and higher. And then on the flip side, Washington hires Jed Fish, a guy with some NFL experience, high-quality college football experience, at Arizona humming at the end of this past season. And I think what it ultimately boils down to is, in his first season at Arizona, Jed Fish did not have a great record by and really any stretch of the imagination. And it's been kind of a building process for him when he got to Arizona, right? They go 1-11 and then 5-7. Then you get to the 11 wins and you start to look at oh, okay. Well, things you righted that ship. On the flip side, Kalen DeBoer's first years as a program leader, 11-2 at the University of Sioux Falls, which you can argue that's NAIA. I don't think that's a fair argument, being a head coach and stepping into a situation. 11-2 make the Final Four of NAIA, and then the next 4 years either wins or coaches in the NAIA National Championship game. I think it's fair to write off the COVID year, especially if that's your first year as a head coach. He goes 3-3 his first year at Fresno State. Okay. Not great, but 2020 is a different animal. 2021 at Fresno State, 9-3. 2022 at Washington, his first year, 11-2. So when you have a history of, one, winning everywhere you've been, every place you have been a head coach, you have a history of being successful, whether that was coaching in South Dakota, being the offensive coordinator at Indiana, being a head coach at Fresno State, Washington. You have a history of being successful everywhere you go. Jed Fish has a pretty good history as well of being an assistant, a long-time assistant in the NFL. Been a college coach at Minnesota, Miami, Michigan, UCLA. He's got a history of being successful on the offensive side of the ball. But his history shows maybe you take some things to get going, get rolling. You might truly have a process of, we got to change the culture. And I've said before, I think that's such a cockamamie bullcrap of like, oh, hey, we got to change the culture. Like every head coach ever. Like Kalen DeBoer probably at some point is going to be like, oh, we're changing the culture here at Alabama. Oh, the culture of winning like 7 national championships over the last 15 years? Okay. Nonetheless, it's going to be muttered at some point because coaches just love saying the words change the culture. But sometimes, and neither place is, ripe for needing a culture change. I mean, they just were basically crowned as 2 of the 4 best teams in America. So it's not as if either side just absolutely has to flip things around because it was going in the dumpster or anything like that. But when one side has a history of having success kind of right off the bat when you get somewhere, and the other has a history of taking their time, easing into it, and really, make no mistake about it, neither Kalen DeBoer nor Jed Fish has a whole lot of wiggle room. Neither one of them has a whole lot of margin for error. If things don't go well the first year, there are going to be questions. Immediately, did we hire the right guy? What's the buyout look like? Are we trending downward? Are we going to keep our place at the top of the college football echelons? People are going to ask those questions if things aren't, 10-win seasons for either one of them in 2024. But I wouldn't be surprised if, and late in the season, I talked about whether, and I think Washington is still a very good football program without Michael Penix Jr. But how much heavy lifting did Michael Penix Jr. to get that team, to will that team to the college football playoff, to the college football playoff national championship game? And I think that might be where the downfall happens. Because Jalen Milroe really started to play pretty well at the end of the season for Alabama. Coming back. Washington's breaking in a new guy. Whole new system, whole new staff. So I think at the end of the day, Washington is my answer. And I know that there are questions about Kalen DeBoer. Oh, he's never recruited in the South. Primetime prospect from Alabama just picked Ohio State over Alabama. There he goes. He's losing the Southern recruits already. I don't think that's true. But I think there are more pieces in place at Alabama. There's less upheaval. Washington, new staff, new conference, new travel schedules, all of those things. So you get a new staff, new quarterback, new offense, basically. Breaking in a brand new staff into a brand new city in a brand new system with a brand new quarterback in a brand new conference. There's a lot there to combat. So in my eyes, I think Jed Fish is a good hire for Washington. I think he'll do a good job there. But I think it's going to take longer than year number 1, and you're going to experience some fall off there. Is it bigger than the other 3 teams who made the college football playoff in 2024? I think the answer to that question is yes. Now, crazier things have happened. Alabama has made wrong choices before. Basically, every coach they hired from about 98 to 2007 was a bad idea. So the idea that, like, Kalen DeBoer is walking into a bulletproof, foolproof situation isn't entirely accurate. But I think he's set up for more immediate success in 2024 than Jed Fish is. And he might be set up for more success in 2024 than Sharon Moore is at Michigan, to tell you the truth. But I think the answer to the ultimate question of who has the biggest drop-off in 2024 is Washington. And whether that plays out that way or not, I don't know. But on February 4th, a week before the Super Bowl, which is a hell of a time to grade who's got what for something that's not going to happen for 9 months, 7 months, whatever. Feels crazy, to start putting labels on that. But I think that's where we're at right now. That is the answer to the question. Who has the biggest drop off? I think it's Washington. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. Certainly appreciate it. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all that great college football content that we're pumping out here on Saturday Glory. If you are listening on a podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. It goes a long way in helping out the channel. We're back at it tomorrow right here on the Daily Huddle on Saturday Glory.